is how can we heal as a community? What are some things that we can do right now to really take that step forward? Because it's one thing to deal with our trauma, but still deal with the rage. You know what I'm saying? Like still having all that. I don't say maybe hatred. Yes, hatred, anger, pain. But how do we get to the place from definitely feeling those emotions and going through that to actually healing?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, and like I said, healing takes time.
Yeah.
When we go into therapy, a lot of times we feel like we have to, that we have to get it all figured out within the first 5 sessions. And if the therapist can't get it done within that time, then that's it. So that's why I keep reiterating the fact that there's a historical narrative to our whole community. And so when you're dealing with history, first of all, you got to be educated about the history.
Wow.
Because if you ain't educated about the history, how do you even go about healing? So that education about history is so key. We don't know. Things like Black Wall Street and all these new things that are coming up, Seneca Village and all these are new. This is new information for us. We think it's only the white community that's now learning. We're learning so much about
We're learning too.
Yeah.
I'm learning too.
And so we have to be educated about our history and where we come from, because we will see common threads of resilience in the midst of pain. And that's the reason why, like I said, I like to bring that up in therapy with my clients, where I say, hey, let's dig deep. Let me show you some videos on what slavery looked like, and what it meant to be taken from your land as an African slave to be brought to America or to be spread across. And then let's identify those traumas. Let's look at what do you think happened to a slave, or how do you think they felt when their families had to be separated from them, when they try to run away, the anxieties that they dealt with, the depression that they went through, it's so many variables, so many
layers. Yeah. And so even trying to process how to escape, imprisonment, slavery, while you're dealing with, that trauma of just like how do I get free? How do I deal with the things I can't control and the things I can control? Like, I can't even imagine.
So yes, we were good with being resilient, right? But then we did it at the cost of never getting the healing. And so our ancestors just ended up transferring all that to us because there was no space. There was no space for them to heal. There was no time to heal, because even when we celebrate Juneteenth, after Juneteenth after Juneteenth happened, that was not the end. You still had segregation on a whole nother level. It was a whole nother fight. There was no space to heal. And one of my clients, he's 15 years old, and we had a therapy session on Friday. And I told him, I said that, what do you think therapy would have looked like for our ancestors as slaves? And he said, yo, Mr. Chris, he said, I think that therapy sessions would be booked all the way, because Black folks would have so much to talk about that they wouldn't even be able to stop. And he said, but I think that Black people's quality of life would be increased because they would have a lot to talk about in therapy, but then a lot of the white slave masters would not have thought therapy was important to them. So even though they were still going to be in authority, the quality of life for Black people would be better because they would be more open and they would be talking more and they would have a safe space. And I thought that was powerful. I applauded him. I was like, that's what I'm trying to get up out of you, because I need you to understand there is healing connected to you when you're aware of that.
Yeah. And the powerful part about that statement for me is them going through that process and passing down that tradition.
Yes.
So you passing down not just trauma, you passing down wholeness to your children, and your children are passing that down. Like that becomes the norm, not tragedy, not traumatic. It becomes the inheritance. Like, you need to be whole, and this is the way we do that. And to me, that's powerful, bro.
Yeah. So when you ask about how we can heal as a community, it's identifying that our trauma isn't a norm. So I understand that my trauma isn't a norm, And so when I'm self-aware of that, I start to look for ways to heal. And part of my healing is educating myself on my history. Then after that, I seek the therapy that is needed. I open myself to therapy and say, hey, that's the space that I can get the healing from. But then I also surround myself with a good, strong support system where I have people who are rooting for me, and I have a band of brothers who are going through the same thing. So for me, my modes of connection sometimes are with my brothers in therapy, because we go through the same struggle, but it makes us stronger because we get to connect and say, yo, that's how I feel being a Black male therapist. And they're like, yo, I get that. And so we need that within our community where we can relate with each other, where we can be empathetic towards each other, where parents are also modeling healthy behaviors, right? Parents are able to model healthy behaviors on this is not the norm. Me cussing you out, or me, and you'll hear like a lot of Black parents who I really call out on when they say, oh, my kid, he bad or what. No, he's not bad. He's a good kid. He just makes bad choices. You got to separate that. Because the identity factor for a Black male, huge. And I put this quote out, the identity for a Black child, period, the identity crises that goes on in regards to just being raised in the Black community and what you have to do. I have 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who have been told by their uncles, if you ain't having sex by now, you're gay. So you deal with that identity crises alone. But then what happens when that Black kid transitions into being resilient enough to get out of the hood? Now they have a whole new identity because now they got to switch codes because they're working within a white corporation. Yeah. So then who are we? Where does our identity lie when we're in our community and we don't feel like we are ourselves? And then when we're out there where we're in white spaces, we can't be ourselves either. So it goes back to, we got to dig deep into our identity, into our history, and into the trauma we're going through, because we have intergenerational trauma. We have trauma of just what it's like being a Black person in general every day. And then we have real-time trauma, because the real-time trauma is the things that we see every time you turn on CNN. It's a whole new storyline coming up. It's a whole new tragedy. So it's like we have these three areas to work through.
Yeah.